Hello, my name is Larry Dobrow. I'm the editor-in-chief of MM+M, and welcome to Cannes, where we are in an air-conditioned room and it is beautiful outside. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about innovative strategies for meaningful HCP engagement, and we've got two terrific guests to talk about it. We have Amy Litt, who is the Vice President of Communications Planning at CMI Media Group, and we have Tom Shea, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at Doceree. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
All right, let's jump right into it. Obviously, HCP engagement has changed an awful lot over the course of the last 3 years with the pandemic. Where are we now? What are some of the things that have emerged over that period that are different, better, weirder, or anything in between? Tom, I'll start with you there.
Yeah, I think everything has kind of been moving towards more digital, less rep interaction in office, and I think COVID just highlighted that and kind of moved it along a little bit quicker. I think we were going to get there either way. Telemedicine obviously kind of really did advance, but just really the difficulties with getting a rep in there and anything that you can do at the point of care really can help solve for that.
One other piece of this, obviously, a big piece of it is DE&I, and a lot of the efforts increased a lot during the pandemic. Some have been pulled back recently due to economic concerns, which is obviously unfortunate. But Amy, what are some of the steps that you've seen? How do these two work together to increase engagement and especially take HCP audiences and reach them more meaningfully than you have in the past?
Mm-hmm. There's two really important things to know about that. And I think it's one, knowing your audience, which is obvious, but not just knowing your audience, what's their demographic makeup, but in the context of DE&I, just considering the fact that your audience is already very diverse. Your HCP audience is already made up of people of multiple genders, of multiple ethnicities, different income levels. Your audience's audience is also extremely diverse. And so having really deep insights into the complexity of the group that you're already trying to reach, and then their needs and their complexities that they're seeing in reaching their, the ultimate end user, the patient, really can help create engagement and give you the right message at the right time for the immediate concern, rather than these sort of more blanket averages. Because what we'd like to say is there's no such thing as an average consumer, right? You take an average of every community oncologist out there, you're gonna get a non-binary, multiracial person who lives in a city of 100,000 people, and that group, unfortunately, is not well represented as HCPs. So you really do need to start with an understanding that DE&I and inclusivity and diversity and equity, they are not new things or extras. If you are not looking at the complexity and nuance of your HCP audience, someone's going to eat your lunch,
Are you seeing are companies aware of this? Are you seeing them do this more and doing it in a more meaningful way than what we've seen over the last decade, 15 years? I mean, with health and wellness, it's always been said that pharma kind of comes second. They wait for finance to do it or some other industry to do it. Is this happening in a meaningful way?
I really like to think that it is. I think that message is coming through, and the volume of data that we can now use to reach an audience just makes it so obvious. You cannot deny the diversity of your audience and the complexity of their needs and their patients' needs. So it's a fairly easy case to make now with clients, I think, but also as demographics among HCPs change. We just released research yesterday, with WPP called Health on Her Terms, where we did this survey that revealed that actually in mental health care, we've reached gender parity. 52% of healthcare providers in mental health are women. And in cardiovascular care, we've gone from 20 to 29% in one generation. So substantial jumps, significant change. The decision makers, the writers are becoming more and more diverse, and the numbers just cannot be denied at this point. So we are seeing, whether they like it or not, clients are being forced to acknowledge that they're going to have to shift who they reach and how they reach them.
Tom, Amy mentioned the increasing amount of data that everybody has access to now. Tell me a little bit about how data and analytics figure into this in terms of HCP engagement.
Yeah, so even at Doceree, we use multiple third-party data providers and kind of plug them directly into our platform. So different types of claim providers that are providing RX level, demographic level data, everything from prescribing behavior. So we have a lot of different data sets that we're able to use. And because we only are targeting the physician, we have the ability to target them very granularly. So we're getting all this data back at the MPI level, which then allows us to target those physicians at the MPI level and then also provide that data back on a one-to-one level as well. So it's kind of a closed ecosystem from the data that we get from our third-party sources through the media that we are able to distribute, then back to the agency on the reporting side.
How does that improved volume of data and quality, I would assume, of data make your job, I want to say easier, but easier?
Yeah, I mean, particularly on the professional side, you know exactly who you need to reach, and you can reach them on a one-to-one level. So that's kind of the easy part at this point. Pretty much every company has the ability to do that. The reporting and really what you get back and how quickly you get it back. That's the main focus, right? Can you get the data back daily, weekly, monthly? Does it have to come in a certain format? Can it be sent to another system for next best action programs or next best engagement? So being able to set kind of all of those up, being able to make them custom is kind of the key.
We're realizing this now. This isn't something that's 5 years in, 10 years in, right?
Yeah, exactly. We could do this right now. We can send data in custom formats pretty much in real time. We get data through server-to-server integration, so it basically is behind a firewall in our platform, and then we can send that out pretty much as fast as we see it.
Amy, Tom talked a little bit about some of the specificity that we have now in targeting. How can that be used to bolster inclusivity? How does that play into it?
So at CMI, we've coined this term, moving beyond omni-channel to omni-dynamic, or I'm sure you've heard us say that before. And the way that, it's again, that specificity, it's that understanding of the need, it is using right place, right time, omni-dynamic, whatever you want to call it, to say, all right, this HCP, fine, they are seeing, to attract their attention, we want to give them new data or a new indication, something splashy. But when they hit that next step, are they looking for access information? Are they looking for information about adverse events? What are the needs that their community has, that their patients have, that need to be addressed in order to ultimately get them to change their writing behavior?
Omni-dynamic is such a better term than omni-channel. We gotta take omni-channel and kind of put it in the buzzword graveyard for a little while. Obviously, point of care is incredibly important in terms of HCP engagement. Where does it fit in the overall media mix? How does reaching physicians at that moment improve outcomes? Amy, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, I think, again, it comes to that right message, right time. I've learned some really interesting things over the last year in this industry about educating healthcare providers, educating healthcare educators, and how we actually learn and how that changes our decision making. So it's really about answering that question at the point that it's being asked, and that might be point of care. It might be making sure that you have something that's in the right language for the patient that's coming in, that then gets them kind of primed for having a more productive conversation with their healthcare provider, or again, answering questions about access, about adverse events, about length of treatment, whatever. Putting that as close as possible to the exam room can be intensely influential and really help both HCPs and patients collaboratively make better treatment decisions, which creates better health outcomes for everybody.
All right. Tom, from your perspective, same question.
Yeah, right place, right time. So particularly within an EHR, being able to serve that message to that physician, just as a reminder, right? There's a lot going on throughout the day. We've done some research reports and studies on our end, and we've seen physicians are essentially engaging with their EHR 6 hours a day. So there's a lot of opportunities to seeing a lot of different patients, and so being able to get that message at that exact point is key.
All right. Let's move on to talk a little bit about trigger-based marketing. I think it's a term that everybody kind of knows what it means, but doesn't really know what it means. Tom, give us kind of a definition and let us know, how does it really work within the context of HCP engagement?
Yeah, so from my perspective, and what we offer is the ability to serve a message at a specific moment. So a certain ICD code is input, brand's just been prescribed, on the NDC code gets input, patient's age, gender, insurance type. So all of these triggers essentially give you a moment that you can place a message in front of that physician at that exact time. So being able to kind of string a few of them together is just really maximizing the ability to serve that message to that physician at the exact time they're at that patient.
Amy, same question.
Pretty much the same answer, I guess.
In that case, let's move on to the next one. There are obviously so many different types of engagement possibilities. We've already talked about a bunch of them. It's not one size fits all in terms of measurement as well. The measurement piece of this, how close are we to unlocking it? How much of a challenge is it presenting, and how are we going to beat that challenge?
So from a strategic perspective, It is still a bit of a challenge because in my portion of building this media mix, there's still work to be done in showing how KPIs actually ladder back to strategic imperatives. Because we can measure anything, we can throw tons of numbers at folks, and then the question is really, well, did this move the needle?
Did it work?
Did it work? That's really a lot of what my job is as a comms planner. Is like, we think it's going to work. Here's a hypothesis. Did it work? And I work very closely with our DA folks to try and tell that story. But that is still something that is kind of surprising to me, honestly, as an evolving need within this industry to really link those different parts of your strategic imperatives to your goals, to the challenges that need to be overcome, to the KPIs that indicate that's actually happening. Okay. So even if you cannot correlate, and I'm sure you can at some points, correlate a specific behavior on the HCP side to a script write, there are a lot of other ways to show that your media does have impact on the business's overall goals.
Tom, from your perspective, measurement, how much of a headache?
I mean, it depends. You can go from a click to, a lift in prescriptions, right? So I think it's first you have to figure out what the goal for that campaign is, right? And be on the same page with the brand and the agency on what that goal would be. On our end, we focus more on the script level data because we are within an EHR, so clicks are really taken out of the equation for the most part. So we do, again, have third-party partners that plug right into our platform, which does allow us to serve a measurement suite called Perform. So you can log in and kind of measure that. But again, we will usually work with the agency and kind of set that up, set up the goals for that campaign, set up kind of what lift, if we are looking for a lift, really just setting those KPIs before we go into it because we do have the ability to measure at some level, a lift in prescriptions.
Client pushback in terms of measurement. I mean, is it ever kind of a tough conversation saying like, here's what we think you should be measuring and them coming back and saying, maybe not?
Yeah, it is because of course that correlation, because again, that's really the tricky part is being able to prove that something happened. What was it? We saw the little green arrow go up, the little red arrow go down, prices change, but what does that really mean as far as the ultimate goal? And I mean, it is still kind of surprising that there can be conversations with clients where it's like, all right, what are we trying to achieve here, folks? Like, what is the actual goal? Let's set that goal at the beginning and align every single part of our strategy as tightly as possible to achieving that goal and know what's going to indicate that we've achieved that goal. And in somebody who works in innovation, we get to do all this really fun, sexy stuff. And sometimes it's like, all right, well, why did we spend all that money? Why are we at con? Whatever the case may be. And in order to make that case, it's really not that challenging, but you really just do have to put the work in to go, here is why we think we're going to get X behaviors, whatever behavior change, measure that, and just make a strong story that ties back to the overall business objective.
Does everybody want to do that work, or is it sometimes you got to give them a little bit of a nudge?
I think from my perspective, typically when you're talking about measuring a campaign, you're then talking about a certain level of investment. So that always goes hand in hand. Do you have enough time and do you have enough overall spend to measure that campaign?
Limited resources.
Limited resources, exactly. And again, how long does the data take to come back? Because if you measure it and then the campaign's over, none of that data is actionable for that campaign. You'll then have to take it and move it to either another channel or another partner. So I think it's the speed in which it comes, and then also how quickly you can get that data there is probably most important whenever we're measuring anything.
We covered a wide variety of topics in a very short period of time here, but I do have one final question for you both, and it's kind of an unfair question given how much the future has been changing over the last 3 years, every other day basically. We're having this conversation again a year from now. Some of these topics about HCP engagement. Where's the area we might see the most meaningful change? What are some of the things you anticipate? What would be a best case scenario for both of your businesses?
I think what I anticipate seeing is a lot more focus on what we call the white coats off moment of the HCP. Is not just, with due respect to endemic pubs, with looking at their behavior within that endemic environment and then using that to translate into their life outside of that endemic environment, right? Is following them through audio and podcasts, their streaming behaviors, their gaming behaviors. I think that's where the future's going to go, instead of kind of looking at HCPs as clinical or robots or fully logical.
Consumers like the rest of us.
Consumers like the rest of us. As Dr. Susan Dorfman, our CEO, says, buildings don't make decisions and write scripts, people do. And so what I think we're going to see is taking everything that we can learn from tracking NPIs, from behavior within endemic environments, and then translating that out to streaming to podcasts to gaming to everywhere else that the HCP, the human, goes in their lives, and where they're absorbing information that's going to ultimately influence their decision making, educate them, and ideally change their writing behavior.
Tom, your take, future.
I think
Small question.
Yeah, right. I think when it comes to reaching physicians in general, it'll start looking, like you mentioned before, how do you measure them? Is it really working? Profitability on reaching that physician. Is it worth reaching that physician? At times it's not worth reaching that physician, unfortunately. And then also having different data partners kind of connected together. I think if you're running a campaign with 10, 15 other partners, one is social, one is podcast, one is EHR, is there a way to have that some sort of connection there? Will be key with even just with data, right? So that the power that you're using from the EHR can then be used to influence another campaign or vice versa.
We're going to hold you to these predictions, you know that, right? A year from now, you're going to be called to account. So until then, Amy, Tom, this was terrific. Many thanks for the conversation. Enjoy the rest of Cannes, even though this will be airing well after we're done. And for MM+M, I'm Larry Dobrow. Thanks for watching and be well.